I never thought I'd be the kind of person people whispered about in the grocery store. But there I was, 6 months after Sarah's funeral, standing in the produce section while 2 women from our old book club pretended not to stare at me from behind the organic kale. I could feel their judgment like a physical weight, could practically hear their thoughts. Too soon, they were thinking. Way too soon. The thing is, they weren't entirely wrong. 6 months probably was too soon by most people's standards. Sarah and I had been married for 12 years. We'd bought a house together, adopted 2 cats, built an entire life that felt solid and permanent until cancer decided otherwise. When she died, I thought I'd never want to be close to anyone again. I thought I'd wear my grief like a suit of armour for the rest of my life. But then I met Owen at the grief support group I'd been attending every Thursday night at the community centre, and everything I thought I knew about myself started to unravel in the most unexpected way. The first time I saw him, he was sitting 3 chairs down from me in our circle of folding chairs, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he stared at his hands. He had this presence about him, quiet but intense, like still water that runs deep. When it was his turn to share, his voice was soft but steady. His husband had died in a car accident 8 months earlier. They'd been together for 7 years. As he spoke about the emptiness of coming home to their apartment every night, I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not attraction, not yet, just recognition. Here was someone who understood the specific texture of this kind of loss. After the meeting ended, we ended up walking out at the same time. The October air was crisp and the parking lot lights cast long shadows across the pavement. I remember he pulled his jacket tighter around himself and said, "Does it ever feel less surreal? Like, do you ever stop expecting them to just walk through the door?" I stopped walking and looked at him. Really looked at him. His eyes were this deep brown that seemed almost black in the dim light, and there was something so raw and honest in his expression that I forgot to guard my own face. "No," I said, "but I've stopped flinching every time I hear a key in a lock." He laughed, this short, sad sound that I felt in my bones. "Progress," he said. We started talking after every meeting after that, just small conversations at first, comparing notes on how we were handling things. He told me about boxing up his husband's clothes and then unpacking them again because the closet looked too empty. I told him about how I'd kept Sarah's coffee mug on the counter for 3 months before I could bring myself to wash it and put it away. These tiny, specific details of grief that only another person in the same situation could truly understand. Then one night in November, about a month after we'd first met, Owen suggested we grab coffee instead of just standing in the parking lot. The cafe down the street was still open, one of those cosy places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. We sat in a corner booth, our hands wrapped around warm mugs, and talked for 3 hours. We talked about our marriages, our losses, but also about other things. Books we'd read, places we wanted to travel, the weird comfort of bad television at 2 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. I remember noticing his hands that night. He had long fingers and he gestured when he talked, animated despite the heavy topics. At one point he was telling me about his husband's terrible sense of direction, laughing through the story, and his hand brushed against mine on the table. It was completely accidental, lasted maybe half a second, but I felt it like an electric shock. Not because it was his hand specifically, but because it was the first time in 6 months that I'd felt any kind of physical awareness of another person. I pulled my hand back quickly, mumbled something about the time, and left before he could see the confusion on my face. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning. I'd been married to a woman. I'd loved Sarah completely, wholly, without reservation. I'd never questioned my sexuality, never wondered about men. And yet something about that accidental touch had woken something up inside me that I didn't know existed. I didn't go to group the next week. I told myself I was tired, that I needed a break, but really I was scared. Scared of what I might be feeling, scared of what it meant, scared of adding another layer of confusion to an already impossible situation. But Owen texted me on Thursday night, just a simple message asking if I was okay, saying he'd missed seeing me at group. I stared at that text for 20 minutes before responding with something non-committal about being busy with work. He didn't push, just sent back a simple, "Take care of yourself," that somehow made me feel worse for avoiding him. I spent the weekend in my house, pacing between rooms, having arguments with myself. This was grief, I decided. I was just latching onto the first person who understood what I was going through. It wasn't attraction. It couldn't be attraction because I wasn't gay. I'd been married to a woman. I loved women. This was just confusion, just my brain trying to fill the void Sarah had left. But Monday morning, I woke up thinking about Owen's laugh, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the careful way he listened when I talked, like every word mattered. And I realized with a sinking feeling that I was lying to myself. This wasn't just grief or confusion. This was something else entirely, something I'd never expected to feel. I went back to group the following Thursday. Owen was already there, and when he saw me walk in, his face lit up with this genuine smile that made my heart do something complicated in my chest. After the meeting, we fell back into our routine of talking in the parking lot, but everything felt different now, at least for me. I was hyper-aware of every movement he made, every time he looked at me, every accidental moment when we stood too close. He suggested coffee again, and this time I said yes, even though every nerve in my body was screaming at me to run. We went to the same cafe, sat in the same booth, but the conversation felt charged in a way it hadn't before. Or maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe he was talking the same way he always had, and I was the one projecting meaning onto every word, every pause, every moment of eye contact. At some point he asked me why I'd skipped group the week before. I could have lied, should have lied, but something about the way he was looking at me made me want to be honest. I got scared, I said. Of what? He asked, his voice gentle. I took a long drink of my coffee, buying time, trying to find words for something I barely understood myself. Of feeling anything other than grief, I finally said. It was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Owen nodded slowly, like he understood exactly what I meant. I get that. Sometimes I feel guilty when I have a good day, like I'm betraying him by not being sad every single second. Yeah, I said, relief flooding through me that he'd interpreted my words that way. Exactly that. But later, lying in bed that night, I felt like a coward. I'd had a chance to be honest, to maybe explore what was happening between us, and I'd hidden behind a half-truth instead. I told myself it was for the best. Owen was dealing with his own grief. The last thing he needed was me projecting some kind of confused attraction onto him. And besides, I still wasn't sure what I was feeling was real. December came, and with it, the holidays that everyone who's grieving learns to dread. Sarah and I had always gone all out for Christmas. The house would be covered in lights, the tree would touch the ceiling, we'd bake cookies and watch terrible holiday movies and host a party for all our friends. The thought of doing any of that without her made me feel physically ill. Owen and I had been texting more regularly by then, just checking in on each other, sharing dark humour about grief that no one else would understand. When he asked what I was doing for Christmas, I told him the truth. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was planning to treat it like any other day, maybe order Chinese food and watch something decidedly non-festive. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Me too. Want to be miserable together instead of separately?" I laughed despite myself. That's the saddest invitation I've ever received. I know, but what do you say? I said yes. Of course I said yes. Christmas Day, he came over to my place in the afternoon. I'd warned him it would be depressing that I'd taken down all the decorations after Sarah died and never put them back up. But he just shrugged and said his apartment was the same way. He brought Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, and we settled on my couch with the cats and put on a documentary about Antarctic penguins, because it was about as far from Christmas as we could get. But somehow, it wasn't depressing. It was actually nice, comfortable. We talked and laughed and shared stories about our spouses, the good memories instead of just the grief. Sarah would have liked Owen, I realised. She would have appreciated his quiet humour, his thoughtfulness, the way he actually listened when people talked. At some point Owen shifted on the couch, and his shoulder brushed against mine. Neither of us moved away. We just stayed like that, this small point of contact, while penguins waddled across my television screen. My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my breathing steady, tried to act like this was normal, like I wasn't hyper-focused on every inch where our bodies touched. When the documentary ended, Owen turned to look at me. We were close, closer than I'd realised, our faces maybe 6 inches apart. "Thank you for this," he said softly, "for not making me spend today alone." "Thank you," I said back. my voice barely above a whisper. There was this moment, this suspended second where I thought he might kiss me, where I wanted him to kiss me. But then one of my cats jumped onto the couch between us, breaking the spell, and Owen laughed and pulled back. The moment passed, and I couldn't decide if I was relieved or disappointed. After he left that night, I sat on my couch for a long time, my mind racing. I couldn't deny it anymore. I was attracted to Owen. I had feelings for him that went beyond friendship or shared grief. But I had no idea what to do with that information. I'd never been with a man. I'd never even thought about being with a man. And even if I wanted to explore these feelings, was it fair to Owen? Was I just using him as a replacement for Sarah? Was this real, or just a desperate attempt to fill the void she'd left? I started seeing a therapist in January. I told myself it was just to deal with the grief, but really, I needed someone to help me untangle the mess in my head. Dr. Chen was patient and non-judgmental as I stumbled through trying to explain what I was feeling. She asked me questions I didn't want to answer. Had I ever been attracted to men before? Was I sure this wasn't just about Owen specifically? What did I think Sarah would say if she knew what I was feeling? That last question broke something open in me. I started crying in her office, these ugly, gasping sobs, because I knew exactly what Sarah would say. She'd been the most open-minded, loving person I'd ever known. 6 months before she died, when she knew the cancer was terminal, she'd made me promise not to shut myself off from the world after she was gone. She'd said, "Promise me you'll let yourself be happy again. Promise me you'll find someone who makes you feel alive." I'd promised, even though at the time I couldn't imagine ever wanting anyone else. And now here I was, developing feelings for someone, and all I felt was guilt and confusion and fear. Dr. Chen helped me understand that sexuality can be fluid, that falling for Owen didn't invalidate my love for Sarah, that it was possible to have genuinely loved my wife and also be attracted to a man. She said maybe I was bisexual, maybe I was gay and had been in denial, maybe labels didn't matter as much as I thought they did. What mattered was being honest with myself about what I felt. But being honest with myself and being honest with Owen were two different things. I kept going to group, kept meeting him for coffee, kept texting him, all while carrying this secret that felt like it was burning a hole through my chest. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to be brave. But every time I tried to form the words, fear locked them in my throat. Then in February, everything changed. We were at our usual cafe on a Thursday night after group. Owen was telling me about a confrontation he'd had with his mother-in-law, who kept calling him and crying about how much she missed her son, as if Owen wasn't the person who missed him most. I was listening, nodding in sympathy, when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked at me with this intense expression. "Can I ask you something?" he said. My heart started pounding. "Sure. Do you ever feel like we're dancing around something? Like there's something neither of us is saying?" The cafe suddenly felt too warm. I took a sip of my coffee to buy time, but my hand was shaking slightly, and I had to set the mug down. "What do you mean?" Owen ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as him being nervous. Maybe I'm completely misreading this. Maybe it's just me. But sometimes when we're together, I feel like there's this tension, this pull, and I don't know if I'm imagining it or if you feel it too. I could have denied it, could have played dumb, protected myself, kept everything safe and undefined. But I was so tired of being scared, so tired of lying even by omission. "You're not imagining it," I said, my voice barely steady. Owen's eyes widened slightly. "You feel it too?" "Yeah," I said, "I do, and it terrifies me." "Why?" I laughed, this short, anxious sound. "Where do I even start? I was married to a woman. I've never been with a man. I've never even thought about being with a man until I met you. I don't know if what I'm feeling is real or if I'm just desperate for connection. I don't know if I'm dishonoring Sarah's memory by having these feelings. I don't know anything except that when I'm with you, I feel something I didn't think I'd ever feel again, and I have no idea what to do with that." Owen was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I just word vomited at him. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was warm, solid, real. "I don't have all the answers either," he said. "I don't know if this is grief or loneliness or something real. But I know that I think about you constantly. I know that you're the only person I want to talk to when something happens, good or bad. I know that I haven't felt this alive since before Marcus died, and maybe that's enough to start with. Maybe we don't need to have everything figured out right now." I looked down at our hands, his fingers intertwined with mine, and felt something shift inside me. A decision being made, a door opening. "I'm probably going to be terrible at this," I said. "I have no idea what I'm doing." "Neither do I," Owen said, smiling. "We can be terrible at it together." That night he walked me to my car like he always did, but this time when we said goodbye, he pulled me into a hug. A real hug, not the brief, awkward kind we'd exchanged before. I wrapped my arms around him and let myself feel it. The warmth of his body against mine, the steady beat of his heart, the way we fit together. When we pulled apart, we stood there for a moment, faces close, and then he kissed me. Soft, tentative, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't pull away. I kissed him back, and it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. That's when the judgment really started. We tried to keep things quiet at first, but the grief group was small, and people noticed when we started arriving together, leaving together, the way we looked at each other. Some people were supportive, some people were coldly polite, and some people made their disapproval very clear. Sarah's sister stopped talking to me. She sent me a long email about how disgusted she was, how I'd clearly never really loved her sister, how I'd been lying to everyone, including myself, for years. That one hurt more than I wanted to admit. Her parents were more measured in their response, but I could feel their disappointment through the phone when I tried to explain. They said they needed time, which I understood, but it still felt like another loss stacked on top of all the others. My own parents were confused more than anything. My mum kept asking me questions that made it clear she didn't understand how this could be happening. Wasn't I straight? Had I been lying to them? To Sarah? I tried to explain what Dr. Chen had helped me understand, that sexuality could be more complex than we'd always thought, that falling in love with Owen didn't mean my marriage had been a lie. But I could tell she didn't really get it. The whispers at the grocery store turned into pointed comments. Someone from Sarah's book club actually approached me in the checkout line and said, 6 months. That's all the time you needed before moving on to someone new? And a man, no less. I guess we never really knew you at all. I stood there, frozen, as she walked away, leaving me with a cart full of groceries and a crushing sense of shame. But Owen never wavered. When I told him about these encounters, he listened and held me, and reminded me that other people's judgments didn't define our relationship. He dealt with his own share of criticism. Marcus's family was horrified that he was dating again so soon. His best friend told him he was making a mistake, that he was just using me as a rebound. But Owen stood firm. He said he'd spent 8 months in the darkest place he'd ever been, and he wasn't going to apologize for finding a reason to feel hope again. We took things slow, navigating this new territory together. I was nervous about the physical aspect of our relationship, worried I wouldn't know what I was doing. But Owen was patient and gentle, and made me feel safe exploring this side of myself I'd never known existed. It wasn't always smooth. I had moments of panic, moments where the guilt threatened to swallow me whole. There were nights I woke up crying, feeling like I was betraying Sarah just by being happy. But Owen understood because he had those moments too, nights where he felt like being with me meant he was forgetting Marcus. Dr. Chen helped me work through the guilt. She reminded me that Sarah had wanted me to be happy, that loving Owen didn't mean I loved her any less, that the heart has infinite capacity. She said grief and love weren't mutually exclusive, that I could honour my past while building a future. Slowly things got easier. Not everyone came around, but some people did. Sarah's best friend reached out after a few months and said she'd been thinking about what Sarah would have wanted, and she knew Sarah would want me to be happy. That conversation helped more than I can explain. My parents started making an effort, asking about Owen, trying to understand even if they didn't fully get it. Owen and I started building a life together. Small things at first. He started keeping a toothbrush at my place. We'd cook dinner together on weekends. We took a trip to the coast and walked on the beach and talked about our futures in a way that included each other. We introduced each other to friends as boyfriends, and even though the word felt strange in my mouth at first, it started to feel right. We still went to grief group, but we also started going to other places, building memories that were just ours. We found a farmer's market we loved, a hiking trail that became our regular Saturday morning routine, a terrible dive bar with amazing wings that became our spot. We were creating something new while honouring what we'd lost. I learned that I could love Owen completely while still carrying Sarah in my heart. That grief doesn't have an expiration date, but it also doesn't have to be the only thing I feel. That sometimes the people we lose give us unexpected gifts, like the strength to be honest with ourselves, or the courage to love again, or the ability to recognize real connection when it appears. The judgment still stings sometimes. I still get looks, still hear whispers, still have people who think they know my story better than I do. But I've learned that their opinions say more about them than they do about me or Owen or what we have together. I've learned that love doesn't follow anyone's timeline but its own, that it doesn't fit neatly into boxes or labels, that it can surprise you in the most unexpected ways. Owen is currently in my kitchen making breakfast, probably burning the eggs like he always does, and I can hear him talking to the cats in that silly voice he uses when he thinks I'm not listening. In a few minutes I'll go join him, and we'll eat slightly charred eggs and drink too much coffee and plan our day. It's ordinary and domestic and nothing like what I thought my life would look like a year ago. But it's real, and it's mine, and it's built on honesty and connection, and the courage to let myself feel something other than grief. I think Sarah would understand. I think she'd be glad I found someone who makes me laugh, who holds me when the sadness comes, who understands loss because he's lived it too. I think she'd approve of Owen, of his kindness and his strength and the way he's helped me become more fully myself than I ever was before. And I think she'd forgive me for finding happiness again, even if it came sooner than anyone expected, even if it came in a form that surprised everyone, including me. Because the truth is, love doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't check with other people first to make sure it's acceptable. It just arrives, unexpected and transformative, and asks if you're brave enough to say yes. I'm learning to be that brave. I'm learning to trust what I feel instead of what I think I should feel. I'm learning that the heart knows things the mind takes years to understand. So let them judge. Let them whisper in the grocery store. Let them send disapproving emails. Let them think they know better. I'm done living my life according to other people's expectations. I'm done feeling guilty for finding light in the darkness. I'm done apologizing for loving someone who sees me, truly sees me, and loves me back. Owen just called from the kitchen asking if I want orange juice or coffee, and I realize I'm smiling. Just a simple, ordinary moment, and I'm smiling. That's what he's given me. The ability to find joy in the small things again, to look forward to tomorrow, to believe that my story isn't over just because one chapter ended. This is my life now. Complicated, unexpected, beautiful in its imperfection. And I wouldn't change it for anything. Total char count, 24,847.